Hello, Widowhood. Our guest today, Kelly, has written a book and is titled Here with You. It is about the journey of healing through grief. It helps children understand that although your loved one may be gone, they are still here with you. Kelly is a passionate storyteller hailing from the beautiful state of Connecticut. Kelly has honored her skills in crafting captivating tales that transport readers to new and familiar worlds. As a loving mother, a wonderful son, and their furry companions, she draws inspiration from the joys and challenges of parenthood. Her relatable story and heartfelt narrative resonate with readers of all ages. Kelly is an emerging author and speaker, available for virtual or in person visits to schools, libraries, and events. Let's get into this conversation now.
Many people talk about the ups and downs of married life, but no one really prepares you for life after your spouse passes away. Welcome to Widowhood Real Talk with Tina, a safe place for widows, widowers, and their friends and family to talk about love and loss. Find comfort as you listen to honest conversations between Tina and invited guests who've experienced the loss of their forever partner. Share their stories of love, grief, and healing. You are not alone in this journey. Join today's episode and discover a wealth of resources and learn how to connect with others who are traveling the same path. This is Widowhood Real Talk with Tina.
Hello, Kelly. Welcome to the Widowhood.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to the Widowhood. What comes to your mind when you hear Welcome to the Widowhood? What was your first thought?
I mean, it's been a journey. I'm about almost 8 years into being a widow. I feel like sometimes the word kind of feels like a four-letter one, depending on the mood.
Exactly. I have heard this and I will repeat this. The club sucks, but the members are amazing.
Yes.
And that concept of that 8 years, what does that look like 8 years later for you? And I want to preface it with the idea people go, it's been 8 years. Haven't you just?
I think I've really turned a corner, honestly, in the last year. Emotionally for myself, I think I was angry for a very long time based off of how he had passed away. So I'm kind of just in the mode of like self-care and, a lot of forgiveness in the last year.
That says a lot. Thank you for sharing that. And don't want to get into the details, but the idea of someone that is just, they're going to listen to this podcast and they have just lost their husband this year. Can you remember what that looked like for you?
Yeah, it was probably the worst time of my life. And like, honestly, at the same time, such a blur where you don't really remember the first year. You just kind of were surviving at that point.
And that's important to know because I am going into my eighth year. And oftentimes people see where I'm at now mentally. And I try my best to say, this is not what ground zero looked like.
Exactly.
Please do not think that this is what I looked like when he left this world. If you were to talk to younger Kelly, what would you tell her based on what you've learned over these years?
To give myself so much more grace than I actually did. I think I just hit the ground running and I just was really hard on myself for a long time.
And those are some of the misinformation about stay busy, be strong for other people. This'll be okay, just let time pass. And I want to say that I found none of those were adequate or accurate at all.
Yeah, agreed.
Because Grief had a little suitcase and she was like, "Oh, you're gonna stay busy? Let me get off, let me come with you. Whatever you're gonna
Exactly.
do. And when you're
Yeah.
tired and exhausted, I will open up the picnic basket and we can get together."
Exactly. Let me put on a song for you that you don't want to hear while you're driving to go start your day.
Exactly. And being a widow and you have children too?
I do. I have a son.
And how old was your son when his father left this world?
He had just turned 1.
And that puts on a different dynamic to this than most people when they think of widow. One, they're thinking of someone older.
Right.
And then the idea of someone younger and with children. Have you found community of other people that have younger children?
In a sense of raising him by myself, no,
Okay. Or just community with other women who are widowed with young children?
I don't know anyone.
Oh, okay. So how old is your son now?
He's almost 9.
9. Okay. I have, unfortunately, several people I can connect you with if you are interested. I have, yeah. This journey has connected me. I know a widow who was actually pregnant when her husband passed. I have another widow who has 7 children. Her and her husband had a ministry and serving 7. And fortunately, others. What area are you located in?
I'm in Connecticut.
Okay. Yep, these people are virtual. I will reach out to them and connect you with them because I think community is very helpful. So your son is 1, and the basis of our conversation is really regarding this book. But I knew to talk about this book without talking about your journey would not serve anyone well because they want to know from what perspective would she write a book such as this? And I want to share, but I don't want to share because I want you guys to get this book. But what was the inspiration? And it's called Here with Us. How did you come from this place of deep grief and just in the fog to write a book? What was that transition for you?
I think for me, I needed to turn all of the pain into some type of power that I could control. As he was getting older, he had lots of questions, and there's really not a lot of books on grief for kids. There's mostly religious based ones, and not everybody is religious. So I just, I went to school to be a writer. It was my lifelong dream, and this kind of just came to me one night when I was laying in bed with him, and I literally wrote it in my notes in my phone.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just came from that, it's like it's hard to explain a person to a child who cannot remember them. He was 1. I mean, he has very, like, small memories of his dad, but, I mean, he doesn't know him.
That is very fair. And mention that, how do you keep his dad's memory alive? How does that work for you?
So, I mean, any questions he has, I answer them, but as he's getting older, they kind of have slowed down a little bit. I think the book has helped him a lot, really, understand because he was like so involved in the process with me. Like he helped choose the illustrations and it's modeled after him, the character. And
Okay.
I think that was really healing for him. I mean, we've done a lot of therapy together and individually. So I think he's like very in tune with his emotions now at this age compared to when he was, like 3 and 4 and had major questions.
Right. I want to read some of this, but I want to say this is not like adult reading. It doesn't serve it justice if you're not looking at the pictures and able to just see this as it goes along. So the cover, Here with You in the Feather, how did that develop? How did that come about?
My mom actually passed away about a year before my husband did. And I always find feathers in really random places. And I was told by someone, that's your mom. Like she's sending you feathers, like the weirdest spots. Like even today at work, I found a little teeny tiny one, like by the cash register. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the one of the focal points of the book. You can find a
Okay.
feather on almost every page.
Wow. And oh, so is that sort of a hide and seek sort of kind of thing to find them? Are they obvious with the feathers on
They're
them?
kind of obvious, yeah, but it was still fun to just throw it in there.
And does your son wear glasses? How
He
much of a
does.
resemblance of this is
It's
identical?
identical to him. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to be certain. Here with you. For Preston, my light in the dark. When you hear that, what does that mean to you and what should the reader think of?
So my son honestly was just the biggest light that I needed through all of the darkness between losing my mom and then his dad passing away. He kind of just I don't know what I would have done without him.
It is amazing what children can do in our lives. So, first off, here, I'm going to read these pages. I'm still here with you. I have not strayed. I'm sorry that I cannot stay. I will always show you the way. Even though I have left your side, I will do my best to send you signs of fluffy feathers from baby bird's nest. Are there really green boots like that your husband and him?
My son's waders on his fishing gear, he has those.
Oh, so my late husband was much a fisherman, the outdoors, the hunting, the doing all of that. And there is something so difficult about when you have to purge or go through their items and all of that. And when I found his waders, my son was like, "I want those." I was like, "You have never been fishing, but
Yeah.
those." I shouldn't say he's not been fishing since his dad passed, but those items have such big memories.
Mhm.
So I could see as Preston looking at this book and just thinking of that. When you said it was healing, but to hear the connectivity of that is something different altogether.
Yeah.
To be trained to have been an author and now writing a book, how does that feel?
It's crazy. I mean, I didn't set out to write a children's book first. I was more into poetry, which you can kind of see throughout the book. I have a very rhyming pattern in the way I
Yeah.
write. But, it just kind of life happens the way it does. And it just, it did.
And about life happening, do you think that your life is the same or different now? And people ask that question a lot, like, just get back to the life that you had. What would you say to that question?
It wasn't possible for me just because I had two such huge life losses so close together. While being a brand new mom, I kind of had to find myself again.
And what does finding yourself again look like? People use those terms, but do you remember some of those details of you walking that out and finding yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I was depressed for so long. I think I woke up one day and I was like, I can't live like this anymore, for myself or for my son. And, at the same time, being a new mom, I think you really lose your identity a little bit,
Yes.
just in motherhood, because it was the first time I was doing it and I didn't have my mom there to guide me through it. So, I really just lost myself in that and grief. And then I got really into, you know, opening up my creative outlet again and writing and, going to the gym, which has been such a huge help for me mentally. It keeps me sane.
I can relate to that. And I like the idea of reopening the creativity because you become a wife, you become a mother, and you only have so much time. So the things that fulfill you start becoming things that are on the back burner because we're showing up for other people.
Yeah,
But it does rescue us when we remember, I like things before this happened, and those things do nurture me. And if I can find a way to return to those, they will serve me well.
exactly.
I can relate to that. I want to read everything, but I don't. But this part I do want to read because I know it is very relevant. There are days when you feel mad and days when you are sad. Birthdays when there is one less chair. I promise you, I'm still there. In the picture, did I'm I'm at a loss because this is just so hard.
Yeah.
This is a conversation we're having, but this is from a lived experience with your son
Yep.
and on the birthday. And I can't imagine there's not a parent that is dealing with a child when they are aching for their loved one to be there. And it's unreconcilable.
Right.
When you were writing this, how emotional was that for you?
It was, it's so hard. It's weird that my son and I were both grieving the loss of a parent at the exact same time. I had 25 years with my mother. He had a year with his dad. His birthday and I were 2 days apart. So, we celebrate our birthdays together. And, I can't imagine as a kid what it must feel like to not have a parent there. Because I know what it feels like as an adult to not have a parent here, my mother. So it's just, I try so hard to think of what his feelings are, and I try to be so mindful of what that looks like for him.
I can relate to that. My children lost their dad in their early 20s. Mark passed in 2017. My dad passed in 2020, but I was 50 years old. So, and that's interesting because people often talk about the complexity of grieving in a family, that
Mhm.
we're missing different, we may have experienced the loss of the same person, but the relationship we have with them is different.
Yes.
You mentioned how healing writing the book was for your son. What have been some other things that you've been able to help him with in his journey of grief?
I think a big part of it has also been to kind of encourage his friends to understand what it looks like. And other kids, even if they have not experienced a personal loss, you don't know what your friend has been through. In kindergarten, they were talking about families one day, and, they were saying, oh, this about dad, this. And he was like, well, I don't have a dad. And they were like, what do you mean? Everybody has a dad. These are 4 or 5-year-old kids. And he's like, but I don't. And that conversation for me, like, he was very matter of fact about it because we openly talk about grief and death at home. But a lot of people don't, and I understand why, but I think there's an age appropriate way to do it. And for this reason, you know what I mean? You don't ever want to think of a kid feeling left out, especially when it comes to such a big thing.
That is very true, especially as we have come through a world pandemic and
Mm,
then just other conflicts that are going on. I am finding that people are finding themselves widowed or widowed at an earlier age than societary norms.
yes.
And that conversation does need to be had. Did you and your husband ever speak about what life would look like in his absence? Sometimes people make that a proactive part of conversation and relationship.
We didn't. We talked about, things to happen if one of us got very sick or was dying, like those types of things.
Mhm.
But never that. No.
The actual living out of life afterwards.
Yeah.
When you look at this part of the book, what memories come to mind?
Just the happy ones, honestly. I think there was a lot of darkness surrounding his death. And it was really hard to pick through the end of time of the good ones. So, it's been very important for me to always speak of him to my son in a positive light. Even if I didn't have positive experiences at the end with him, I don't ever want to paint him as a bad guy to my son. And that's really important to me for, raising a boy as a woman to become a man that's going to be in the world and treating people the way they should be treated.
I agree with that. If I may ask another question, what particular birthdays or moments for your son in sadness does this recall to you, this portion of the book?
I think more so when he was younger, when he was kind of just like, oh, like, who's in my family? You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a big, huge family. I have one sibling, and I have my dad, and my sister is married, but that's kind of it. I mean, it's just us. So he was trying to really understand like the dynamic of what family is. He's very smart. And he's kind of like, hey, like something looks off here, you know?
Okay. And that is and children are just so raw and natural with conversations. So there's not a lot to tidy up. It's like the facts just get laid out there and they're just delivered and you're like, okay, what do we do now, Preston? Because okay, they talked about having dads and I don't. So why is that? Like you can just fix it or deliver it.
Yeah,
And those questions are harsh. I
yeah.
mean, yeah. And I love the ever present. Did you actually put a the birthday hat on the chair and celebrate it that way?
So one Christmas after my mom had died, I had put off, she had cancer. So she had
Okay.
a favorite bandana that she wore, and I had put it out on the table the first Christmas, as a spot for her, and no one was allowed to sit in the chair.
That is, I love that idea of honoring our loved ones, not to try to just push on like their absence isn't real, but to
Yes.
honor and make it part of it. What are some other ways that you have honored their absence, your husband and your mother?
I just really try to talk about them. He references, like, oh, dad, or like Grammy Janet, who is my mom, like he knew them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I feel like sometimes people stop talking about a person once they die. And I'm not like that. I mean, I've always made it a point to say, oh, your dad did this, or like my mom did this. And I just think that's so important. I think it makes a kid feel very involved. I mean, yeah, it sucks that they died, but they're still here. You know what I mean? Like, they're not physically here, but their energy is still here. Their love is always still going to be here.
And that seems to be the premise of the book, about
Yes.
even in the difficulties that their energy and they are still, their essence of them is still here, that you don't have to feel alone. And I was so glad to see that there was a fish involved after the waiters in the beginning.
Isn't that great? I love it. My illustrator
Yes.
is so amazing.
And just the excitement. I am here with you in everything that you do. When you learn to cast a reel and catch a fish or two, I am so lucky to love you. And you're saying you just wrote all of this down just one night it came to you and just sketched it out on your phone.
Yeah.
How does it feel to that sketching to see it manifest and actually be something?
It's wild. I mean, it's been about almost a month since the book came out, and I'm still just kind of like, did it though? Like, it's just so surreal. Like, I've been doing a lot of like book signings and stuff lately, and to have people come up to me and literally just be like, "Thank you." Like, I needed this so bad, not only for my child but for myself, even as an adult, has just been so fulfilling and full circle for me.
Wow. You mentioned book signing. How would one contact you for a book signing and to schedule that?
So it just my email. You can go to my website and it's on there. It's just kelly.kaminskas@yahoo.com.
Okay. If someone is thinking of embarking on writing a book, what are some lessons learned that you would share with them?
Find a publishing consultant or a group that is going to give you complete creative control over what you want to do. There's lots of people who want to just cut corners and have you make them money. I had a very difficult situation with the first publisher and I lost a lot of money because of it, which
Mm.
led me to find a company that would help me self-publish. So I created my own business, an LLC, but they basically just did, like, did the format and did the heavy lifting stuff because I've never done this before. And it was just such an amazing group of women that were so like for other women getting their stuff out there and really making my dream come true, but also educating me on all the business aspects of it too, because there's so much involved in being a writer now, especially with social media. You have to have 10 different hats. So it's definitely a journey, but just to stick to it.
Okay. When you talk about the 10 different hats in social media, so was this a self-publishing venture or what
Yes.
did that? Okay. And if someone is looking for a publisher, are there like some red flags, 2 or 3 different things, whatever you can think of that looking back, reflection saying, "Oh, that was a red flag. That was a red flag," that you can share that may be beneficial for people?
Yeah, I mean, just do a lot of research. With the first person that I was with, she had all amazing reviews, and I had spoken to other authors she had worked with, and things were great. But I think her life kind of imploded, and everything seemed to snowball for every author she was working with. But yeah, definitely reach out to other authors if you can, if you know who have published with them. There's you can self-publish or go the traditional route with sending in your manuscripts and stuff like that, but it's hard. It's a vicious world of publishing. It's not what it used to be. I was talking to an author the other day, and she's been writing since the '90s, and she's like, even it changes every 10 years. You just have to really do your research and dig deep if this is something you really want to do.
Okay. So, if I'm understanding you, the person you originally worked with would have been fine. So you probably would not have found the red flags. It was life that happened to them that just was a shift that made
Yeah,
working with them. Okay. That's different than you were working with someone and then identified some things that
right.
were not healthy habits that wouldn't serve you well. Okay. I will be here with you when you are big and strong. My memory you will carry on through the wind, the trees, and with bees. When your son looks at this, what are the ways in which you see him carrying out his dad's memory?
As he's getting older, I could see, certain mannerisms that he has of his, and I'm like, oh, there he is. You know what I mean? That you
Okay.
forget. I mean, after a long time, you know how they say, well, you start to forget someone's voice, or this and that, and it's like you really do when a person's not physically here. But I could see him as he's getting older in him, which is funny. It's just genetics are wild. They
Right.
really are.
Just the behavior. What items, if I may ask, that you may have maintained for your son to have as he gets older that are from his dad?
Yeah, I kept a lot of his watches for him when he gets older, and some like fancy wallets that he had. He was a very into fashion, so just like things like that. Like his wedding ring I have for him, and that kind of stuff.
Oh, his wedding ring. I never thought about that. I think about women handing down engagement rings to their daughters, but this is actually the wedding bands for my husband and I. I
Oh,
had them reshaped into
yeah,
hearts, and that's how I was able to keep those. I never thought about keeping it and passing it to our son. That is an idea for people to consider.
yeah, definitely.
Of this book, is there a favorite part for you?
Honestly, it's so hard to pick.
Okay.
I love the scene where there's all wildflowers in the background. My son is very outdoorsy. He loves to be outside. Yeah, he actually goes to a school that is nature based. So it was important for me to get that aspect of his personality in the book.
I feel like you've done a really good job.
Thank you.
To hear people say thank you that they needed it for their child, but they also needed it for themselves. Did you ever think about somebody needing it for themselves?
No, I just really thought it was, for kids. But the more I talk to people, the more I hear, like, wow, I just really, this is a family book. Like, it's not just for kids. Like, I've had people be like, I'm buying this for my great uncle who just lost his wife because
Yes,
it's light, but at the same time, it's getting the impact that it needs to be getting.
exactly. Because this is a hard conversation. And you would think, as much of it is an inevitable reality, that we would be better at having this conversation,
Yes.
but we are not. Has this book created avenues for you to speak with people? Do you do public speaking, or how does that look for you?
I'm going to be starting. Yeah, I've been working with a couple of substance abuse prevention programs. So I'm going to be doing some speaking at a gala and some retreats that they're having in the fall.
When people lose a loved one, oftentimes people, and you mentioned that, began to make purpose out of this. Did you start that concept off in the beginning, or was it just trying to survive the reality of this?
Yeah, I was just trying to survive.
And I think that's important to know because some people want, I know this is hard, but I'm going to have purpose in it. I'm like, I just want to fall apart.
Yeah, it took a long time to get there. I mean, that like you said, when you're in the ground zero of it, that you don't feel like that. You don't.
Exactly. You really want to be able to. I'm going to read this last section. Finishing Derby. On the days you win and on the days you lose, I will be there too. And so we have a fishing derby and a trophy. And when you see that, what memories come to mind for you?
Just that I think kids try to overcompensate for adults grieving sometimes. They're so in tuned with a parent's emotions. So I feel like for my son, he always wants to portray like I'm happy all of the time, for him. And I'm like, but that's okay, but to not feel happy all of the time. Like we're gonna have highs and we're gonna have lows. And it's so important to identify all of the emotions that we could have, not just the positive ones. So I think that was kind of my focus for that right there. Like no matter how we're feeling, we're still going to be able to ground ourselves and have that person, here for us in our heart, even though they're not physically here.
That makes a lot of sense. Were there points where you hid your grief from your son?
Oh yeah. I mean, at first, he was so young and, in his toddler years, I didn't want to cry in front of him because, kids get scared of that, of their mom crying and, I'm okay. But now I'll cry in front of him and he comforts me and he's just, and he knows that it's okay for him to cry too. He kind of got in that phase last year of, well, boys don't cry. And I'm like, oh, we're going to talk about that. Yeah, they do. You know?
Mm.
Like it's so important to me to raise and guide him that he can express any emotion without feeling like, oh, well, men don't do this and boys don't do that. It's just, being raised by a woman, I'm going to show you. Yes, they can.
That is true. There are some things that misinformation that needs to
Yes,
be changed and have a narrative that's going to be healthy.
right.
If a person you met is struggling with just managing grief with their children, from your lived experience, what guidance would you give them?
If they are open to doing family therapy, I would recommend it 110%. It has helped us so much, even in our day to day lives with like little things. If we're butting heads or we're annoyed with each other, if we're able to sit down once a week with our therapist, both together and apart, it's so helpful for us. Just being able to say, okay, well, like I feel like this today and this is why. And like, what's the solution here? Is there a solution? No. Sometimes we're just in a bad mood. And that's just how the day is going to be. But it honestly has made us so close. And we just are able to talk about anything together. I'm not scared to ever tell him if he's doing something that's bothering me. And it's the same avenue for him. If I'm making him mad, he's telling me.
Wow, that's a very articulate young man to be able to convey his feelings that way and
Yes.
to be able to express that. You mentioned something that I hear people struggle with a lot. The difference between if this is a grief moment or if this is just a child being a child. How have you learned? And if possible, to even differentiate between those two, how do you narrow that down?
I feel like he's rarely ever in a funk, but when he is, I've said to him like, I let him do his thing. If he needs to be by himself and cry, I'll say to him, like, are you feeling sad about dad? And
Mhm.
usually, that's kind of where it is. I think something will trigger him at school. Someone will say something, and he'll kind of feel he doesn't like to feel different from other people. You know what I mean? So I think certain little things like that trigger him, but being able to, have access to therapy and, all these emotion words that we can talk about has been really helpful for him as he's gotten older. So I think that's, kind of diminished those feelings a little bit because he's able to express when he's feeling like that.
Thank you. I'm going to read the back of the book because that's public knowledge and that may be on a preview somewhere.
Yeah.
If your loved one has passed on, close your eyes and listen to your heart song. I am here with you where the wildflowers grow, or whichever road you go. You are never alone. Have you felt isolated in this grief journey?
Yes and no. It just depends on the day, I think sometimes. I got married pretty young for my generation, I guess. I'm a millennial. I was 23 when I got married and we bought our first condo and we worked really hard to get there and I think I was the first out of all my friends to get married and have a child. So it was definitely a weird situation when all of a sudden now here I was at 27 and I had a dead husband and a newborn, well, an infant. so, so no one really got it, you know? And it was hard to explain that to someone because if they've never lived it, then how could they you don't even want them to imagine it because it sucks?
Thank you for explaining that. Has your friendship group changed? Did friends remain or did you lose friends or how did that work for you?
I mean, I've had pretty much the same friends that I've had my whole life. I think, as you get older, friendships do change like any other relationship. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely some friends that I did lose, and that's okay. I mean, everybody. Sometimes friendships just run their course, I think, and they're in that season of your life for a reason, and then they're not, and that's okay. But yeah, I've definitely have had changed relationships with friendships.
Okay, I noticed that a lot of people say that in their loss of their spouse, that some friends don't know, have the emotional bandwidth or capacity, and they don't know how to show up. Being that you've experienced this, and if someone's listening to this conversation and they have a friend that is going through grief that their spouse has passed, any recommendations you would give them about how to show up or what would be beneficial?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think you don't really need to say anything. I think presence is the biggest thing that anybody needs, no matter what situation it is. And sometimes people just want to like sit and not talk, but just to know someone's physically there is means so much.
I would agree with that. I have asked you several questions. Any questions you possibly have with me?
As time goes on, do you feel like how do you not make it your identity, talking about losing a spouse, and how do you keep the boundary there of like, I'm talking about this because I want to educate others, but it's not all I am.
hmm Oh gosh, this is not all that I am.
Yeah.
I Widowhood Real Talk with Tina is a registered 501c3 nonprofit. I have a full-time job as a project manager. My children are adults. My daughter is engaged. I talk to my daughter. She lives in California, but you would think she lives around the corner. I talk to her 2 to 3 times a day easily. I have remarried. My mom and sister live next door. My faith going to church and relationships and friendships and other things, that is who I am as far as a person. This is a part of who I am, but being Mark's widow, even though I have remarried, is a part of who I am for forever.
Right.
There's no way of separating those two, but I know I cannot make somebody's situation different. But the space that I spend with them and what I do, that impact I know is real. But what I've learned in this process, we all have to work out our own individual grief journey. We will get possible encouragement or different insight from other people, but it does become an individual journey that we have to go through because our grief is unique to us and the person in which we have lost. So that part is necessary, but I know that I've done what I'm supposed to do in the space that people give me, but this is not all encompassing of my life and what I'm doing. I mean, sometimes it can be like we just finished a Walk for Love, a annual event walkathon, and 7 days of posting, 7 days of doing everything, and it also was a fundraiser, which I'm glad to say we met our goals. And excited about the grief garden and the butterfly release ceremony we're going to do from the funds that we raised. But what Mark's death has shown me more than anything else is life is precious. And life, we don't know the end date of this for any of us.
Right.
And I need to live the moments I have. And that makes me realize that to be present when I'm in situations and to be able to enjoy life.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have covered quite a bit. Did we cover everything you wanted to discuss in this conversation? If not, I would please let me know if we didn't cover everything.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you, Kelly, for being here with me. Thank you that you're part of the widowhood. Sorry, but thank you for this book that I know that will be a treasure to so many people. And where can they find your book?
It's on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Okay. All right, thank you. Her email address and everything will be in the show notes. And please feel free. Oh, what social media platforms can people find you on, Kelly?
I'm mostly on Instagram. It's just my name at Kelly.Kaminskas.
Kelly, thank you so much for writing this book. I want to allow you to close out this conversation with the audience.
Okay. I mean, I think the best thing I could say right now is if you are going through a grief journey or you're new to it, to just remember that it's not always going to feel so heavy all of the time. Sometimes grief is going to feel like a boulder sitting on your chest. And then sometimes it's going to feel like it's just a little pebble in your pocket. But I promise that you're going to be okay. Even if every day you don't feel it, you are going to be each day a little more and more.
Thank you. Thank you for those wise words. And I can definitely agree with that very much. You have a good day. Thank you,
You too.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending another episode with Widowhood Real Talk. If you found the contents of today helpful, share the episode to anyone you know who may need it. Subscribe to the show and tune into Widowhood Real Talk each week. Then visit widowhood-realtalkwithtina.org to join the community and access additional resources. Remember, you are not alone in this journey.